Hey folks, Friday the 13th, in full effect. I almost started the stream without the microphone. It was over there, just chilling. And I almost went live. I may have made a few mistakes like that in the past. But I think I've learned enough lessons with however many times I've done this. So I think I'm finally getting there. I'll get good enough that I won't make any more mistakes. Right. If you believe that, got a lot of learning to do. Both you and I. Okay. Topic of the day is Dark Agile. This is something that I never heard of until, gosh, I'd say about a year ago, and I realized I was a common creator of Dark Agile. So Dark Agile, as I understand it, I'm sure others have definitions that I'd love to hear, centers around doing Agile inside of an organization where Agile really isn't supported, desired, or even an option, but you're kind of unwilling to accept the fact that no one else wants Agile to be a thing, and you and your team are going to do Agile anyways. That's a good thing, but it also comes paired with some serious challenges because you're swimming upstream. This is something that I've always just done because I was never comfortable just kind of accepting the way things were and saying, oh, well, that's the way we've always done it, so we're going to keep doing it that way. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's not how I roll. I just can't deal with that. So I start trying to fix things that I perceive to be suboptimal. And that's okay for some people. It's not okay for others. And it can be because of the challenge of your swimming upstream. When you start to implement Dark Agile within your organization, one of the things that I learned is you've got to make sure everybody else that's along for the ride is really along for the ride. Mr. Agile Biker in the house. What's going on? So I am perfectly comfortable, perfectly willing to be that guy that says, screw it, we're not going to keep doing it the way we've always done it, and just not accept things the way they were, the way they are. That's cool. You need someone that's willing to lead the charge, but you also have to understand the mindset of the people that you're bringing along the ride with you. That's something that I admittedly haven't been as good as I should have been in the past, making sure, hey, I'm signing us up for this. Who's on board? Because it does become a challenge, and you get push from a million different directions as your Dark Agile begins to see the light of day, and questions start being asked of, hey, what's this thing? Why are you doing it? Why aren't you doing the thing the way everybody else does the thing? And that can be a challenge. That can be frustrating for those that haven't been down that path, or maybe are uncomfortable with those questions. So that's one of the things that I would really recommend, is that if you do plan to bring Dark Agile into a place where there is no Agile, just know and understand that everybody in that team is along for the ride, and it's going to be beneficial if you can help them, if you can arm them with some info, talking points, whatever, or maybe just have them just defer to you, right? There's all kinds of options, but don't send them out into the wild without any support, which is something I've done, and it blew up in my face, as you can imagine. So, Kraz, you are correct. That is usually what happens. That is usually you end up building something or doing something that others didn't think could be done. This happened for me at Teradata just after Bob left. We got over that crest in the hill and began just crushing things. Everybody started asking questions like, hey, how do we get some of that? So Dark Agile Biker, is when you're doing Agile in an organization that doesn't desire or support Agile, you're unwilling to just say like, okay, I'll do it your way. I'll do it the old way, even though I know there's a better way. So that's my Friday the 13th topic. I was struggling since last night to come up with something that I felt was appropriate for Friday the 13th, and stumbled onto this morning. I didn't know Dark Agile was a thing. I've been doing Dark Agile like most of my life. Lately, I've been transitioning into doing Agile, where Agile is welcome and desired, and that's a much happier place. And it enables you to achieve success in a much less painful and often a quicker manner, which is a bonus. But sometimes that challenge is really fun. Like I said at the beginning, not everybody was on when I started yapping, but I enjoy being that person that says, "Oh, really? This isn't going to work? Okay, well, give me 6 months and I'll prove you wrong." I get a lot of energy and joy from doing that. That's why I started talking about making sure when you make that call as a leader in your organization, make sure you prepare those that are coming along the ride with you for some of that backlash or headwinds or whatever those things are out there. Stealth Agile is another thing. Yep, lots of ways to describe it. Like I said, I had never heard of Dark Agile until about a year ago, but it was something that I heard about and then realized, hey, wait, that's me. But it does have its challenges. It does have its rewards. Like I said, I really enjoyed that. I was the guy that always cheered for the rival of the local team when I was growing up. So I lived in Northeast Ohio, and everybody loved the Browns. So I became a Steelers fan because it was fun. You know, there's something clearly wrong with me. I can't explain it. My father is still trying to figure out how that got messed up. And he ended up with that son. But I was that guy. So I get enthusiasm from that. So that's fun to me. But it is, as I've said, it is actually more fun to be in a supportive environment where Agile is desired and Agile is the thing that people are trying to go. So I'm going to just let everybody know. If you post in the chat asking me if I've read something, the answer is probably no. The number of times that people have said, "Oh, that reminds me of this. Have you read that?" And like, no. "Oh, have you heard about this theory or this, rule?" I'm like, no. So I have not read The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Wilson. Perhaps I should. Yeah, like when I was a kid, I thought Darth Vader was the coolest guy ever, and nobody liked him. He was the bad guy, but he was cool to me. I didn't want to be the bad guy. Like, that's not what I was after, but I always appreciated the opposing view. Yes, I am unwilling to not resist, which, like I said, when you have that gene or that defect or whatever you want to call it, just know the splash radius that is created. And as I mentioned, that's something I didn't do a good enough job of in previous years, previous jobs, of understanding the splash radius and the pressure I was putting on the people in my team as we were swimming upstream. Yep, we do prefer to rebel. So that's good. So Dark Agile, that was one of the things I want to know. What are the other things people call it? Stealth Agile. Haven't heard that, but makes perfect sense. I don't know what other names or labels that are out there. Looking for those of you that have been down this path. What struggles have you run up against? What successes have you had? One of the biggest successes I had, as I mentioned, was at Teradata. That's where Bob and I met. They are an engineering organization. Agile Biker, I'm just going to ignore your comment about the football game last week. I'm going to ignore that. but Teradata was an engineering organization, like hardware engineering organization. So their process was super crazy waterfall. And we were the software engineering arm. And we were unwilling to accept that our software engineering process had to fit in their hardware process. So we started doing Agile. And it came to be that same thing that Kraz mentioned up top about, hey, that's awesome. How do we get some of that? And our success of operating in an Agile manner in the greater Teradata process became kind of a thing across the organization. I had the opportunity to go on what I called the Agile Roadshow. And for about 6 months, I was going from office to office across Teradata, sitting down with teams, explaining, hey, this is how we're doing Agile. This is how it can work. And then spending a week or so coaching and consulting them and adopting the patterns and processes that we had put in place. That was really cool. It was a really great experience. And it appeared to continue after I left. So very happy with that. And that was my first real experience of dark Agile and understanding the challenges that went along with it and those red tape challenges that you're going to run into consistently that are going to slow you down. And you got to be willing to fight the fight, right? Like Fire Sue says, it's not futile. If you really believe in it, you're going to do it. And I really believed in it. So it is definitely harder, without a doubt. But I think we all kind of know it's the right thing, which is why we're here, which is why we do what we do. So Fire Sue, good to have you back. I assume you're not on the road. You are not in a Gulfstream RV traversing the country. I assume since Agile Biker's here, he's not on a bike in a mountainous region somewhere. And Kraz 457, we work together, so I know where you are. Dark Agile, problems, questions, successes, share them. Questions, frustrations you may have, share them. Twitch Prime subscriptions, share them. Yeah, I guess it's fair that since we're going to eat in about, what is that? 77 minutes. It's safe to assume that you're not in a mountain somewhere, because I would never make it there. I would not. What? Do you ever stop traveling, Fire Sue? Ever? And SoCal sounds so fancy. Like, I feel like that's what the cool kids say, which is why it sounds fancy to me. So, work, travel. You're looking for. Oh, man. Yeah, did anybody not start their career doing Dark Agile? I guess I started my Agile career in like gray Agile. I didn't know it was a thing. I just was left in charge and started changing things and doing things the way I thought they made sense. Oh man. Fire Sue's like traveling around doing all the cool stuff. Nice for you. Yeah, I don't it would be nice to, well, it's one of those things. Like, it would be nice to not start your career doing Dark Agile, but is that struggle kind of worth it? Is there really value in having to fight the fight, and figure things out along the way, as opposed to a nice rosy path. Like, I do wonder if things would be different. It's one of those things that I historically had not had a lot of mentors in my professional career, and I see it as good and bad. I see it as good because it forced me to figure things out on my own, but I also wonder if I had really good mentors, like if I had met Bob 20 years ago instead of 10 years ago, um, would my career have been accelerated? It's just one of those things I think about. I'm not sure what the right answer is. I don't know what the best is. It's probably different for everybody. Everybody has their own way of learning and growing, so I'm sure it's different. But it would be weird to like be dropped in like, hey, this is Agile, this is what we do. Yeah, it is an interesting internal debate. Right. Yeah, like that's the thing, Kraz, of you're forced to figure things out. But if you have a good, so if you drop in somewhere and there's a good agile leader, like any of you that are out there that really believes in it, has set things up well, um, has the core values, is a servant leader, does all of those things, I think there's an opportunity for those folks to really accelerate their growth. Now that becomes the same thing as like a technical lead, making sure they don't become dependent upon you, and you as a leader empower them with the tools and give them the space to stub their toe or go off road a little bit and try some things and break a few things and learn along the way. It's just like parenting, I would imagine. If you got to give them their space, free range children, right? You got to give them a little room to roam, and figure things out. So it would get down to the type of leader that's in place. See how things would go. Yeah, that without management approval. So, Kraz, you asked a question about top-down agile. That's something that with Kazi, I got some decent exposure to, where a CXO hired me to come in and make the teams agile, right? That's not really going to work. I've always found in my travels that agile adoptions are usually, well, they are most likely to succeed when there is belief and buy-in on the process from the two ends of the spectrum. One, the team that's going through the transformation, and two, from the most responsible person in the organization. Most responsible being having the most responsibility, be it the VP, the CEO, CTO, whatever it might be. Because at some point, that's going to bubble up. Someone's going to get frustrated, and someone's going to go talk to that executive and say, hey, this is a bad idea. This isn't working. And that executive has to have the backbone to say, cool, I get that it's frustrating, but this is the direction we're going. I need you to get on board. And you can't afford to have them back down and say, okay, well, we'll make it easier for you, and we won't do that thing. That's the first chink in the armor that ends up creating all kinds of problems down the road. That's why you have to have the people that are going through the change, right? They got to be willing and up for it, and the people that are going to support the team have to really be bought in as well. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Kraz. I've let you down yet again. Another book that I'm sure is fantastic that I have not read. Well, one of these days, somebody's going to say, hey, I learned about that in this book. Have you read it? And I'm going to be like, yeah, I did. And it was awesome. It might take a while. Yeah, Bob is big on the frozen middle. He ends up spending a lot of time in organizations where that happened. Thanks for the softball, Agile Biker. That's very kind of you. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that's the one. But actually, I think we have that Amazon Blacksmith overlay thing that has a list of books that people have suggested. There's a few things there. Find some of the other books people have talked about that are like, yeah, I don't know that. It happens all the freaking time. And the worst was, well, not the worst. The most common occurrence happened when the enterprise architect I worked with at Dude Solutions was one of the most amazing individuals I ever met. He was going through getting his PhD, and he had this like really amazing skill that he could read something, a book or a paper or something, and consume it, remember it, and apply those concepts in real life like he had been doing it for 5 years. It was not normal. And I told him that. I'm like, dude, you're not normal. Like, this is really an amazing ability. Most people read a book, something sticks with them, they apply it, they hone it, they refine it. But this dude was freaking crazy, and it was like mind-blowing. Like, how do you do that? And he would always reference these things. Like, always. Oh, hey, I read this and I did this, and he was like crazy young, right? He was an enterprise architect in his late 20s, and he was fantastic. But he had that mind to where he could do that, and that really enabled him to grow and be successful very fast, right? As you can imagine, that would be a crazy talent to have. But he would always reference these things, and he would drop books off on my desk, or he one time printed out this 90-page thesis that he read as a part of his doctorate or whatever. I don't know. And I just was like, Brent, like, I'm not gonna read this. I'm gonna count on you to tell me what I should know, and then I'll use that. So that became the running joke, because that's how he rolled, right? His mind worked like that, where just give him a string of text and it will be consumed, it will be processed, and it will be used. And it was annoying, but it was fantastic, because he was usually right. Like, oh man, come on. Why do you always have to be right? And then why do you have to have like backup for your argument in your back pocket? But he was great to have on the team. Really good. All right, so we've got a lot of problem solvers in the room. We need some problems for the team to attack here. Because I'll just keep talking about whatever. Except for that game that happened last Saturday that Agile Biker mentioned that he shouldn't have. But the good news is they play again tomorrow. So all will be right in the world when we win the 104th version of the Battle for the Victory Bell. Well, Agile Biker, I feel like you would be the one best positioned to answer that, given that in your current role, you are transforming an entire company into adopting Agile. But my stab at that question is it's no different. Work is work. That's one of the things that I actually spend a lot of time with people in organizations, getting them to begin to understand it. It's weird how much time it takes for people to really understand we're all doing the same thing. We all have a list of things we want to get done. We all try to put them in order, and we all try to knock through that list as quickly and effectively possible. But for some reason, folks aren't willing to go there. They aren't willing to flip that switch mentally and say, yeah, like I need to, as a sales organization, I need to acquire the leads. And then those leads need to go to the right people, and they need to have the discussions and make sure they're armed with all the information they need to successfully have those discussions and then close the deal. That parallels pretty closely to, okay, I need to know what to build. Then I need to figure out how to build it. Then I need to build it. And we need to test it, and we need to deploy it. So there's still a step of things that need to happen. Yeah, just as I was leaving Dude Solutions, there were a couple of teams really getting into mob programming to where they basically set their work in progress limit to 1, and they super swarmed or mob programming. I think they ended up backing away from the full-on mob. I'd have to check. There's a couple of people that are sometimes on the stream that might be able to jump in and help. I'll see if they're here. Some of the agile coaches that were there with me at the Dude, they were really digging into that, and that was an interesting experiment. And there were people that liked it, and there were people that were okay with it, but in the end, I'm pretty sure they ended up backing down to just a traditional swarm. And the way we swarmed was we had a story kickoff. So one of the things, I'm a little bit weird. I think Kraz457 has run into this a little bit. Bob differs from me on this as well. I prefer not to do task breakdown or breakout as a part of sprint planning. I prefer to delay that as much as possible. So what we adopted was we would have a story kickoff. Once it's time to grab that next most important item off the top of the sprint backlog, a group of people would grab that together. They would then swarm around breaking down, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? What's the design look like? Who's taken what bits and pieces? And we got to this, what we called contract-driven development, where that group, as a part of the story breakdown, would define the contract of how things were going to work. And that would enable us to run in 3 parallel directions at the same time. So the front end would start writing code based on the API contract that was going to be built. The back end would start writing the API based on the contract that we had defined. And then automation would start being written at the same time as well, based on the contract of both of those. So everybody would start writing at the same time, and we would meet at the end. All the tests would be green, and everybody was happy. Never that simple or easy, but that's what we evolved to over time. And like I said, there was some experimentation with larger mob-based programming. We tried that for probably a number of months, and like I said, that was as I was leaving, but I believe we ended up evolving back into more traditional swarm style. Yeah, Chris, that's something that, quite honestly, we need to figure out how to make happen where we're at. And we're up against it, right? Because if you go back to a year ago, before all this started, everybody there were like 31-person teams, and that's how they rolled. And they rolled that way for quite a long time. They were successful. They They got acquired. Their revenue is crazy good. A ton of great things about it. But then scale becomes a challenge, and that's really what Raz and I are solving together. So um, it is a challenge, and I end up using work in progress limits, pretty aggressive work in progress limits to try and address that. It is a mindset thing, but in true like dark agile manner, that's one of those things where I don't even talk to leadership about that. Like that's not even a thing that I want them to even know or think about. They don't need to know or think about how we do our stuff. That's where I always revert back to a lesson that I learned with boards is you want to keep them in the dining room. You don't want them in the kitchen seeing how everything's made. You end up just every sprint churning out great product. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, you're always evolving and refining the process. And that's one of those things. It's probably not even dark agile, but that's just kind of how I roll as a leader. Like, okay, hey, we got this. We're gonna optimize the way that we work. Don't worry about it. You hired me to do that. So let me do my job. And that's what we do. So to me, the biggest part is, again, buy-in from the people doing the work, because it is a different way to work, and it can be more challenging depending on the baggage that you have, good or bad baggage, with how you've worked, the way you grew up as a developer. Were you a part of a team early and often in your career, or were you that lone ranger that kind of just got projects and did things and uh, working with people just wasn't the way you rolled? Well, there's all kinds of challenges to come up against that. Well, now Agile Biker, aggressive work in progress limits, I'm more than happy to implement them for others. Implementing a work in progress limit for myself, that's a whole nother story. Yeah, Kraz457 sees that like all the time now. He sees my terrible incapability to operate with a reasonable work in progress limit for myself. One of the things that I actually talk about with pairing or any other multi-person approach is you end up deserializing things. In the traditional one person does one thing at a time, you end up with a very serial approach of somebody writes the code, somebody tests the code, somebody reviews the code, somebody deploys the code. So some of the success that I've had with engineers specifically is saying you're basically doing a real-time code review. You don't need to do code reviews at that point. You don't need to submit your pull request for approval, because it was in real time approved by that person or persons that you are working with. So I use that to get them comfortable with, we're doing the same amount of work. We're just doing it in parallel. So oftentimes people don't optimize or change their workflow based on that. So they still go through the same thing, and it looks, feels, and smells like two people doing the same thing one person used to do. But in reality, if you're doing it well, you end up paralyzing a few things, and that's where you gain that force multiplier that everybody's talking about. But sometimes you just have to like get them to stop, look, and understand what's happening. Oh, brave Dave. Brave Dave. Oh, Agile Biker with a fantastic question. Have you been told it's one off, or and you buy it, or you've been told it's one off and you don't buy it? So I would attack that. I get a good question every once in a while, Agile Biker. Not often, every once in a while. Um, so I would try and break that down and attack that problem like it's a product. You're cautiously buying it. Fair enough. I would understand the why. What's the why? What's the business reason that we're doing it? What happens if we don't do it? So similar to prioritizing work, what's the business problem we're trying to solve? And what you're going to have to struggle to get them through is a date, right? Well, it's a date. We committed, blah, 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 right? Like all that stuff. And then you're going to have to find a way to get everybody to stop and think like, okay, cool. So there's a date. What monetarily happens to our company if the date is different than what we previously thought? What happens? Because you also have to understand what happens if you move to this model of half day on Saturdays. Right? That's not free. That has an effect in many directions. Morale, all those things, right? There's a indirect monetary cost that goes along with taking that approach. Hopefully, as you're having this discussion, Brave Dave, hopefully your partners come back with a very compelling argument of why this is so important, so that you and they can explain that same thing to the team, and the team understands why, and they are willing to volunteer. That's your best case scenario, is that there's a clear business reason why this is so important, and clarity on why this truly is a one-off thing. If all of that is actually true and it's not a bunch of BS, because engineers will see right through that, then the team will volunteer. Teams want the products they work on to be successful. Unfortunately, leaders don't do a good enough job in a myriad of ways to where teams don't understand why things are so important or why things are being done a certain way. So it feels like they're just being told to do things. That's not a compelling or exciting way or place to work. So my hope for you, Brave Dave, is that you can have a crucial conversation. Book I read, folks, mark that one off the list, with your partners and understand a logical, valid business reason of why we should be doing this. Because if that's true, if that really does exist, and you have that same discussion with the developers, they'll be on board. They'll do it. They'll knock it out. I'm sure they'll come up with some crazy way to make it fun and exciting. And they'll come in, they'll do it, and they'll be out. And then they'll be able to see the return. That's the biggest thing, is being able to connect the dots for those engineers that are going to volunteer. Okay, cool, we did this and it changed things. It made things better. Not, okay, we did this and it's the same thing. Like, that sucks. Right. All accurate points, my friends. Yeah, so um I would not allow them to slap the political pressure label on it, because so many people do that. And I see a lot of companies like blaming things on the board of, oh, the board says we have to do that. Like, no, that's crap. Like, do your job, operate the company, lead the organization, and explain why. So if they do give you political pressure, and that's the blanket statement of why we need to do that, that's more than a smell. Like that's a head for the hills. That's a go listen to those uh 3 podcasts Bob and I did about leaving the nest and landing safely. But yeah, again, I think if you can get to the why, and that would be my goal. And actually, that's what I've said to people. So when things have been put on the table like this for me, I would say, okay, cool. I'm willing to go have this discussion with my team, but I need to have complete understanding of why this is important so I can explain to them and have their buy-in. Like, I'm not just going to go tell them to work on a Saturday because you made some stupid commitment and now you're afraid to back down, or you're afraid to course correct, or whatever the right word is. Like, that's not okay. I always go back to, our engineers are insanely logical people. And if we put a logical reason in front of them, they might not like it, but they'll get it and they'll buy in and they'll make it happen. But it can't be a recurring thing, and it can't be we're cleaning up someone else's mess, which often is what gets that political pressure label. That's the challenge. And I've had pretty good success I've got a group of people that work in logic all day long. Like, that's their job. That's how they think. Give me a logical argument, a logical reason I can put in front of them. Yeah, they are. They're very good at it. Kraz457, have you heard that before? It seems like it's you may have some battle scars from that. Yeah, I've seen stuff like that before. It is definitely a smell. It is definitely something to keep your eye on. But as a leader in the organization, which I know you are, by title or not, Brave Dave, you're a leader in the organization. That's all I ever strive to do as a leader, is have it be a logical reason. Why are we building this thing? Why are we asking you to work on a Saturday? Why are we not building this thing? Why are we changing directions? It should be a well thought out, clearly communicated, non-BS description of why. Hey, we all have baggage, my friend. We all do. Amen, Agile Biker. This is one of those moments where you'll walk out of this next week. You'll know, okay, cool. These folks get it. And yeah, we're in a bad spot, but we're going to work through it because they understand. Or that smell is going to turn into a stink. And you'll figure out the next move, what the right thing is. But yeah, I would treat it, as Agile Biker said, treat it as an opportunity, right? Like, I wouldn't fear this moment. I would take advantage of this moment. I would take advantage of this moment, like Agile Biker said, to really understand who the leaders are, because anybody can be a great leader when things are going well. This is that moment when you get clarity on, is this a group of people that I can work with to lead us to wherever we want to go, or is it not? The good news is, coming out of this, you'll have an answer and you'll have clarity, and you'll know what your next step should or shouldn't be. Instead of guessing, like, now there's an opportunity to get down to the truth, to get down to the facts of where the company's going, what's happening, and the direction it's going to take. So I would welcome this, right? Welcome it as a chance to really understand who the organization is at a core. And then you have everything you need to know. Yep. It is a good thing you read that book, my friend. Crucial Conversation should help. And I hope it goes fantastically well. I really do. It's also a great opportunity just like to practice these things, right? Like, these are not discussions that come up all the time. So it is an interesting opportunity to put all those things you've studied and learned about and put them to the test. And you're going to mess something up, right? You're going to walk out of there saying, "Oh man, I phrased that wrong. I should have done this. I should have done that." That's okay, right? Don't beat yourself up about that. That's just learning. That's life. But you'll do fantastic. Brave Dave, where are you right now? Like, physically, you've got to be in Texas, right? There's tons of fantastic jobs here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bolo. Okay, so who besides Agile Biker knows what Bolo is? I don't. Time for the Googles. Bolo. Bolo.tv? What? Oh, it's an app. Oh. Yeah, see, look at you guys. See, you all knew what that was. And I didn't. Typical. Thanks, Kraz457. Ooh, Illinois. Yeah, okay. Like when I moved from Ohio, the economic wastelands. That, yes, been there, done that. Understand completely. Bolo. Now I know, look at that. Learned something else today. Nice. Okay. Yeah, there does appear to be a lot of good opportunity in Texas. Yes. We try to be supportive, Fire Sue. Yeah, Brave Dave. Don't be afraid to reach out on here or Discord or wherever it might be. Definitely happy and willing to help in any way we can. All right. I'm going to shut it down. Thanks, everybody, for talking about Dark Agile or Stealth Agile, as Traveling Fire Sue says. Brave Dave, we got your back, man. We're all here for you. think you got some great advice from the crew. Go in there comfortable, confident, and again, use it as an opportunity. Like, you're going to walk out of this understanding who the company really is. So take care of yourself, as Kraz says. Have a great weekend, and we will chat either on Discord sometime between now and then or next Friday. Hey, everybody.